welcome back. My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PayDirtDFS.com. You can find me on Twitter at Paydirt_DFS. This is going to be another episode of Community Conversations. This is a running series where I talk about some concepts that are either coming from the community Discord over at PayDirt, which is free to join, conversations with other creators in the industry or other DFS professionals or touts, or this instance is going to come from a coaching session that I recently did. So they are always going to be centered around things that are pertinent to either DFS or content creation or math. This one is going to be more math heavy, but it's also going to be some DFS theory that is pretty important to know. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about building lineups for contests correctly and not wasting win equity, right? And not wasting win placement. So the recent coaching session that I did was with somebody who is a good player. They have been finding success and they've been doing well, but they've been wasting a lot of their equity on the lineups that they're building because the contest selection that they're going with isn't optimized for what they're doing. Right, so a little bit of background, like that they are a solid player. They place in the top 1% an adequate amount of time, and in fact a very good amount of time, and I would expect them to actually regress because they've been doing so well in terms of 1% finishes. But it hasn't been translating to a gain in ROI the way that it should. So why could that be, right? Like you have plenty of 1% finishes, you're getting wins at an equitable rate, like you're doing well enough on those kinds of things, but your ROI is still in the red, you're still not in the black. So there can be a lot of different reasons for that, but the main culprit here is actually going to be contest selection. And the main issue here is going to be that you're creating lineups that, yeah, they have a high 1% finish rate. And you're going with like the barbell strategy and everything like that. But if you're not entering them in the contests where they can win you the most consistent money over a long term, meaning that they place correctly in the contest and that they finish correctly for the contest, then you're going to be either wasting win equity or not having enough win equity. So the way that I showed him this in this coaching session, I will do the same thing here really quick, where I show you guys what I was doing in this, and then I'll show you a much better way to visualize it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be visualizing lineup construction and finishing percentages against the contests that you're entering. Okay. So we will jump in here. So here I have a little. I'm just going to be drawing things, right? This is just draw or paint or whatever. Yeah, the paint app. So the way that I was showing him was if you have a contest, right, where you can finish somewhere along this scale, like this is the top finish and this is the worst finish, like this is 0 and this is infinity points, right? And you build a lineup that can finish anywhere between, say, here and here, right? This is fine. Like, you have a lineup that can finish very, very well. You can, and it's, it has a very wide range of outcomes. You have two lineups that you're looking at here. This one, or you have this one, right? So this one has a more narrow range of outcomes where you can't quite finish as far forward as the red lineup can, but you can still finish well. You can still finish a little bit better than the red lineup in terms of the floor, right? Now, it's important to note when we're thinking about this of where we need to place with our lineup in order to maximize the win equity of the contest. So say that this was a 50-50, right? We're going to use this orange to designate the 50-50. If all that you needed to do was play a lineup that finished somewhere here, right, in order to win, then both of these lineups are likely wasting a lot of win equity, right? Because you can finish in the 50-50 you can finish here, 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 you can finish here. In the red lineup, you can even finish farther away from where you're most equitable, right? Like you can finish past where the blue lineup is. So you have all of this when really all you need to be doing is finishing anywhere between here on both lineups, right? So the perfect lineup to enter for 50-50 is going to be something that looks like this, where like there's no way that you're finishing way over here, right? Like these lineups have a much higher ceiling and a much lower floor, but you're going to be finishing quite often in this area where you actually can cash and make some money. It doesn't matter if you finish all the way up here in a 50-50. You don't make any extra money by finishing all the way up here, right? So, okay, that's talking about 50-50s. Now, let's talk about a GPP. Let's talk about a small field GPP first. So this green is going to be the small field GPP. So say that with a small field GPP, you need to finish here to win it, right? This is where you're going to end up actually winning the GPP, is this green circle. Now we can see with this lineup, the best that you can finish is like not cashing, right? Like the best that you can finish is maybe a 45th percentile finish or something like that. The worst that you can finish the worst that you can finish is like a 45th percentile, and the best you can finish is a 55th or a 40-60, whatever this looks like to you. With the blue lineup, right, this one with a narrower range of outcomes than the red, but still wide, you still have win equity. Like, you can still win this GPP. You can still finish here, right? You can also finish down here. You can still finish here. You can still finish here. Like, you can cash the lineup. If the cash line is somewhere like this, right, you can still end up cashing this lineup. And you can also win with it. With the red lineup, you can similarly cash with it, right? Like, you can hit these cash points. You can also win the GPP, but you can also place way up here, right? So in a similar way to with the cash game lineup here, with this cash game consideration, both the blue and the red lineups have a range of outcomes that is far outside of where you're actually making money. Like, you gain no extra win equity, you gain no extra ROI, no extra expected value by using the red or the blue lineup in a 50-50. In the same way as you're wasting that expected value with these lineups and according to the 50-50, with the red lineup, you're still wasting quite a bit of expected value here, right? Like, you're still wasting quite a bit of placement equity. The blue lineup, you're not. The blue lineup, you're only wasting a tad, right? But say that this was a super large field contest, right? We're going to designate that with purple. So with purple, you need to finish all the way up here. And still, you're going to be cashing here. So the blue lineup can cash fine. It can get all the way up to here, which is maybe, a 10th, a 5th percent finish, right? But only the red lineup of these three lineups has actual win equity in a large field contest, because the range of outcomes is wide enough to allow you to actually place in the top 1%. So here is a very crude, we'll give you a little close-up, vision of different lineup types. The gold being a 50-50, the green being where you need to place along this range for a small field GPP, and purple being a large field GPP. So the idea here is the range of outcomes of your lineup and the placement equity that you have in a total contest. You want to be playing lineups that have enough of a range of outcomes and enough win equity to push you into where you need to be to make the most possible money for that contest. This is just a visual representation of how you should build lineups for different contests, right? So in a 50-50, you want to build a lineup that the vast majority of the time it's just finishing between the 45th and the 55th percentile. Like, that's it. You want to place where you can cash, because you don't gain anything extra from finishing 60, 65th, 95th percentile in that contest. It doesn't matter. And with a small field GPP contest, like, you don't need to have the nuts, right? You need to have a very good score, but you don't need to have the nuts. Whereas in a large field contest, you need to build a lineup that has the highest ceiling possible and can possibly be the nuts and can beat a vast majority of the field, right? So that was a not great visual representation of it, right? Like, where I just drew everything, but hopefully some people were able to follow up. I also built up a little app here to show it using some math and using some lineup variations, right? So let's jump back in. So here, I built up something that is going to simulate two lineups against each other and their outcomes 5,000 times, right? So here's lineup A. Lineup A is going to be one with a wider range of outcomes. The 0th percentile score is 0. The 100th percentile score is 190. Oh, really quick. Quick caveat. One, I'm assuming a normal distribution in this. Typically, you're not going to have a normal distribution. I understand that. I get it. Don't make me spend hours to make this point, okay? I just wanted to build up normal distribution so that it can show the differences between the lineups and the differences between a median and a ceiling and show kind of the distributions between these lineups. So it is assuming normally distributed. Don't come after me for that, all right? I have, in my MLB models, I have standard deviations, and I have the actual deviations for players based on their range of outcomes. In this, I don't. Fight me about it. Wanted to give that quick little caveat. 2, if you're not already a subscriber over at paterdfs.com, go subscribe. It's $30 a month. If you use the promo code BAKE, then you can get $5 off your first month. Anyway, back to the math. So, as we're looking at this, lineup A, the median score, the average score is 90. Lineup B, the average score is 95. All right. So then I made it so each one of these in the 50th to 60th percentile and these 10th percentile buckets are going to be going up by 20 points each time for lineup A, and for lineup B, they're going up by 15 points for each time, right? So lineup B is going to have a narrower range of outcomes, but a higher median, whereas lineup A is going to have a wider range of outcomes and a lower median. All right, so we'll see how that plays out here in a second. But it's worth noting that lineup A is likely in the 40th to 60th percentile, which in a normally distributed, which in a normal distribution is going to be the most likely outcome. It is going to lose to lineup B, or it is going to play similarly to lineup B, right? So all the way up until about this 30th to 70th percentile, we are still seeing these two be very close. And then we start to see lineup A pull away. 80th percentile is 150 to 140, 90th is 170 to 155, 100th is 190 to 170. If I was running this based on an actual standard deviation metric, then we would be cutting off at about 75%. That's where I use floor and ceiling. Is 25th percentile outcomes are floor, 75th are ceiling, but I digress. So that's what we're doing here. I then went in here, and here's just a random variable, rand, and I'm giving a different variable to both random A and random B. So this is applying to lineup A, this is applying to lineup B. Now, here we have a whole bunch of math. Like, y'all can't see this, but we have all of this going on here. Oops, I broke it. So we have all this going on here, and all this is doing is it's saying if this number is somewhere between these ranges, return a number between these two ranges. So, for instance, if rand A is between 0.6 and 0.7, it's going to return a number somewhere between 110 and 130. All right? So again, normally distributed, we're just assuming some rands, it's fine. Don't yell at me. So I did the same thing with lineup B, and now it's just doing the same thing, but if it were between 0.6 and 0.7 here, it would be between 110 and 125. So then we're just coming up with, if lineup A is beating lineup B, then return a 1. If lineup B is beating lineup A, return a 1. So now we can come over here, right? So now we're going to be looking at how often they beat each other. We can actually back up a little bit here. So lineup A in this, oh yeah, and I just took this down through 5,000 rows. So lineup A wins 45.28% of the time. Lineup B wins 54.1% of the time. So That makes sense considering lineup B had a median of 95 and lineup A had a median of 90. We expect lineup B to win the majority of the time. So then when we look here, we can see their finish thresholds. So I'll zoom in on this really quick so you guys can see this. But they both beat 0 fantasy points 100% of the time. And then we start seeing some differences here, right? So lineup A only beats 10 fantasy points 90.88. Lineup B beats it 100%. So this is where we can start to see the wider range of outcomes for lineup A versus lineup B. When we get up into this range, which is where we're dealing with their medians, we can see that lineup A scores 90 plus 50.52, which makes sense, that's its median, whereas lineup B beats 90 points 55% of the time. So lineup B is still beating lineup A all the way basically up to 120 fantasy points, right? This is where it equalizes out, is right here. So after that, we start to see lineup A start beating lineup B. 24% of the time for 140 plus versus 21. 150 is 19.6 versus 14.1. Moving all the way up to where lineup A can score 180 plus points 4.8% of the time, whereas lineup B can never score that many points. All right? So this is a demonstration of a lineup with a wider range of outcomes and a higher ceiling and lower floor versus a lineup with a more narrow range of outcomes with a smaller ceiling and a higher floor, right? Lineup B, the narrower range of outcomes with a higher median, is going to win more of the time. But lineup A, with the wider range of outcomes and the higher ceiling and lower floor, is going to be able to score in a higher point and take down larger GPPs because they can score more points. Now, as we are thinking about this, right, let's go back to what we were talking about with this fun little thing, right? Say that we needed a lineup that was going to score in that mid-range the most. Obviously, we want lineup B here, right? Like, it is going to score the vast majority of the time somewhere here in this range, where we're looking basically 70 into 110, right? Like, this is the main median range here. It's going to win against lineup A the majority of the time. However, when we start looking at this green one right here, that's where we're going to be saying, okay, well, now we want to be scoring this like 110 to 140 range. So it's still pretty close, but maybe we want to start looking at lineup A. And then when we look at this purple one for large field GPPs, it's not even really close. Lineup A is a significantly better option than lineup B. So if we take these thresholds and we say now, say that what you needed to win a median, say that what you needed to win was in a small field GPP was 110 fantasy points, or let's say 140 fantasy points, right? If what you needed to win a small field GPP was 140 fantasy points, it is still likely better to choose lineup B than it is to choose lineup A. Even though lineup A gets there a little bit more often, you're not wasting all the extra placing finishes here as you are with lineup B, where you're not getting into those ranges, right? So maybe a better example here is going to be that 120 point, where they both get there 35% of the time. But if you only need 120 fantasy points to get there, there's really not much of a reason to choose lineup A over lineup B, because they both get there the same amount of time, and lineup A has all of this extra equity just going to waste. Whereas if you needed to score 160 fantasy points to win a GPP, the lineup is very obvious that you need to be choosing lineup A, because lineup B is not going to get there as much of the time, and if you need more, you're not going to get there at all. So that was just what I wanted to go over, and this was building lineups that are adequate for the GPPs that you're entering or for the contests you're entering. The goal, after all of that, the goal, remember, is to not... It's not about scoring a certain amount of fantasy points. It's about beating the rest of the field. So In a 50-50, you need to just place right in the middle. So build a lineup that has a really good chance of finishing right in the middle. For a small field GPP, you only need to beat 100 people. So build a lineup that can beat 100 people. It doesn't need to have the highest ceiling. It just needs to have the best chance to beat 100 people. And if you have a good idea of what those 100 people are going to be building with and the kind of lineups that are going to be in that contest, then you can create a lineup based on ownership and leverage that is going to give you a good chance to pass the field while not also blowing them all the way away. Say that if you're in a 100-man contest and you play a lineup that is a 9v9 versus everybody else in the contest, right? Like, you need everything to go right, and you're very boom or bust. You're either going to lose by 100 points or you're going to win by 100 points, right? But you don't want that. Really, what you want to do is you want to win by like 10 fantasy points. You don't really care about the extra 90 fantasy points of win equity. That doesn't matter. So build a lineup that is going to let you pass that field, but is not going to waste a whole lot of fantasy points and expectation and ceiling. Whereas in a super large field GPP, you need to have the nuts. You need to beat 30,000 people. So you need to build a lineup that has the highest threshold for fantasy points possible. All right. So anyway, this again was another episode of Community Conversations. This is episode 4. If you have not watched the other 2, go into the playlist on YouTube and go look at the other 3. Yeah, the other 3. There's been some really good thoughts that I think that I've put down on paper there. If you have not checked out paydirtdfs.com, go check it out. I said in the middle of this that if you use the code BAKE on a monthly subscription, then you'll get $5 off your first month. There are models for nearly every single sport that you can play for DFS, as well as some free research stuff as well. Regardless, thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you think that I'm awesome and you want more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. I will be back sometime in the next couple days with another episode of Community Conversations or something involving NFL stuff. That's coming up on the pipeline as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great day and a good 4th of July, and I will talk to you guys later.